Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Mccartney, and I'm the content manager here at the Cosmosphere. We are super excited to witness the landing of the Mars rover Perseverance here around 9:55 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we're even more excited to have Cosmosphere Camp alum Michael Staab here again with us to talk us through it. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Michael.
Hi, thanks.
Awesome. All right, well, let me tell you a little bit about Michael, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Michael currently serves as a fault management and system autonomy engineer for lunar missions at Northrop Grumman and is a former Mars exploration rover opportunity flight director. Michael holds a Bachelor of Science in Aerospace Engineering from Wichita State University, a Master of Science in Aerospace Engineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology. He is an aerospace engineering duty officer for the United States Navy, an aspiring astronaut, and of course, a former Cosmosphere Camp counselor that we're extremely proud of. If you have any questions during the broadcast, be sure to drop them in the Facebook or Zoom chat, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the presentation. If we don't get them to the end, we'll still try to answer your questions after the presentation's over. So without further ado, please help me welcome Michael. And before I jump off here, Michael, if you would just give us a brief synopsis of the Mars 2020 mission for those not familiar.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mars Landing Day. This is a 10-year mission in the works. It's very exciting to finally get here to the point where we're finally going to land. Unlike launch, there is no uncertainty of whether we're going to land today. We are going to land today. We're on a ballistic impact trajectory with Mars's atmosphere, so we're going into the atmosphere today, and we're going to land regardless of whether we want to or not. So the question about what Perseverance, the Perseverance mission is NASA's first true dedicated astrobiology life detection mission. Its job is to assess the habitability of our landing site today, which is in Jezero Crater on Mars, and is to look for the evidence of past habitability on the surface of Mars, as well as take core samples of those areas that we believe may potentially, and the key word here is potentially, have supported past ancient microbial life on the surface of Mars when Mars's atmosphere and climate was much warmer and much wetter than it is today. It has a system of 7 instruments on board that can assess the habitability of this Jezero crater. It has a set of caching samples that it will take core samples of areas around Jezero crater. It will core those samples. It will cache them inside of the sample caching system, and that will leave them on the surface for eventual pickup by another mission called the Mars Sample Return Mission that will then return those samples to Mars. It'll be the first time in human history we have actual dedicated, uncontaminated samples of Mars delivered to Earth for study. There's obviously a lot riding on today's mission and today's landing. This is the first leg of a decades-long sample return campaign to not only cache samples, but then to eventually return them. So this is but the first piece of that sample return campaign. We've got to get Perseverance on the ground first. We've got to get those cores sampled. And then later on in this decade, what a mission that is currently under study is to land, send out a rover to go pick up those samples, get them on a rocket, get them into Martian orbit, pick them up, and then return them back to Earth. So that is the big goal. Right now, the teams are going through their final checks. I've been listening to the control loop on some of the callouts. One of the big things they just did is they turned the transmitter off on the spacecraft. So Perseverance is now truly on its own. There are no more commands that are going to go to the spacecraft. Once the spacecraft starts EDL, it is going to finish EDL, and there's a neat little thing, part of our sequencing of how we do EDL. EDL is completely autonomous, so it's run by the spacecraft on board. I was listening to Dr. Mani, who is the EDL commentator today, the very famous EDL commentator console seat. She will be giving the call outs for EDL today. Was saying that the do EDL sequence consists of approximately 500,000 lines of code. And those are all the commands that the spacecraft needs in order to run EDL. EDL is what we call a critical event, which means that if we don't complete this event through to fruition, the spacecraft will crash. It'll be the end of mission. So EDL is one of these things that we spend a lot of time as engineers really assessing. We really go through this sequence with a fine-tooth comb. We look at all the ways that the activity can go wrong. We build lots of robustness and resiliency into the system so that we can continue EDL. Things like if you have a computer that resets in the middle of EDL, well, you obviously can't have a computer resetting while you're trying to land because you're trying to land. You need to fire parachutes, you need to fire pyros, all these things at the same time. So we build resistance, we build robustness and resiliency into our system. We have extra computers. We don't let our computers reset. We just get down to the surface. So what's coming up here in about, let me look at my clock here. I'd say about 10 minutes from now, we're going to have the first major event, which is cruise stage separation. So we're going to get rid of the cruise stage, and then from there, Perseverance is on its own. It's going to go through hypersonic reentry through the atmosphere. It's then going to pop a supersonic parachute, and then from there, it has to get rid of its heat shield. It then has to find where is a safe place to land. It has a system on board called terrain relative navigation, and that's what it uses to figure out places that are safe to land and places that are not safe to land in Jezero Crater. It's going to detach itself from the back shell. That's the white part of the capsule. It's then going to fire its rockets, and it's going to steer its way towards its final landing point. As it gets closer to the ground, the descent stage will begin the famous sky crane maneuver that Curiosity demonstrated in 2012. It's going to lower Perseverance about 10 meters below on some wires. Below the descent stage, it will complete the rest of the landing. Once we have weight on wheels, we will fire a set of pyros that will cut those wires, and the descent stage will fly away. And hopefully, after all this is done, Perseverance will be safely on the surface of Mars. There are some very special callouts that I will be looking for. I'm going to have actually the clean mission control loop up because I'm a former flight controller, so I'm much more used to the type of conversations that take place in the control center on the mission control loops. I know the callouts that I'm looking for, so that's going to be a lot easier for me to try and help us walk through this today. So Michelle, do we have any questions to start with, or do you just want to get straight into the video? I hear silence. Okay, we'll just go straight into the video. Before I bring it up, I want to let everyone at home, if you came to my Insight watch party, there is a tradition at JPL where we share the Lucky Peanuts before any major critical event. I'm sure that they have their individual peanuts at their stations that they will take before the event starts. But I want to share that I have my Lucky Peanuts here, and before everything gets started, I'm going to have my set of Lucky Peanuts before we go in. This is a JPL tradition. It's not superstition. It was started back in the 60s when JPL was first trying to successfully land spacecraft on the moon to demonstrate not only interplanetary navigation, but also the ability to land on the surface of the moon. There were some nervous engineers there at the time, so they decided to bring out Lucky Peanuts one day, and the Lucky Peanuts coincided with a successful landing, so the Lucky Peanuts were a tradition that were there to stay JPL. So even today on all of our missions, even in quarantine, even during a pandemic, we're still going to do the Lucky Peanuts, although in a safe manner so that we don't, put anyone at extra. So I'm going to take my peanuts here. And let me get the... Okay, can everyone see the list? Everyone see the video here?
As per step 205 in the OCP, we can confirm that MRO has started their first flu.
Copy, EDLCOM.
Hey, Michael, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
Yeah, everything looks good. Sorry about that. We're having some
Awesome.
little bit of issues over here, but you're
No
doing
worries.
Great. And
So I hope everyone was able to partake in the Lucky Peanuts. I had to make sure that I actually had to go down to the store last night to make sure I got some because I didn't have any.
Awesome. We've got our peanuts over here too, so we're doing good.
Okay, so let me make sure that we're all the way up here. So kind of give you an idea of how the room here is laid out. So here's the spacecraft. This is a visualization.
EDL prep anchor has begun.
We have stopped our AMAN, started the raw DP for EDL, idled the nav filter and IVP, and we are now propagating via the DIMU. We've powered on our UHF, but it's not yet transmitting, and the anchor has complete. We expect our next anchor to start in 2 minutes.
Okay, so that call out basically means that they're getting the guidance, the GNC equipment on board turned on. That UHF call out stands for ultra high frequency. So that is an antenna that will send data from the spacecraft up to a relay orbiter that then is bent pipe and sent back to Earth. So Perseverance actually has two telecom systems running today. So they have an X-band system that can do direct to Earth. So we get tones on X-band that come directly from the spacecraft back to Earth, and then UHF data that's a backup that goes up to a relay orbiter that then will relay that data in near real time back to Earth. So hopefully, if everything goes right, we'll be able to hear, we'll be able to see everything as it comes down in real time. Now, real time, of course, is relative. The one-way light time delay between Earth and Mars right now is about 11 and a half minutes. So to give you some idea, when we get the first indication that the spacecraft is starting EDL, is actually in the atmosphere and slowing down, the spacecraft has already been on the surface for 4 minutes. One-way light time delay. So it's kind of interesting to think that the spacecraft is both alive and dead simultaneously. We don't know that until we get the signal from the spacecraft as it travels through interplanetary space until it is picked up by the ground stations. So I don't know if you actually know this. So like I was saying before, to give you some idea, this view here is the Mission Control Center. So this is where the ACEs, which are the flight controllers, as well as the ground system engineers,
here we are
making sure all the data is getting in here correctly. So this room is what we call the critical events room. I hope everyone gets a chance to go out and see this place because really history is made in this room. This is where we land Mars rooms. But to give you an idea of how the room is set up, so in the very back there are what we call the VIPs. So the NASA managers, the JPL director is back there. The director for flight projects at JPL is back there. The two rows in front of that are where the engineers sit. So the different subsystem engineering leads. You have telecom, you have
powering on
activity lead, you have propulsion, all that stuff. So they're all sitting in there. There near the front, the gentleman with the shaved head, that's actually one of my former flight controller colleagues. That is Bob Lineweaver. He is the real-time operations for 2020. So he is sending any of the commands that are going to the spacecraft. And his job doesn't just include anything that's prior to landing. He will be there for many, many hours afterwards, sending commands to the spacecraft to get the spacecraft safe. To get the spacecraft safe as it's on the surface once landing is
under 4 minutes now.
So the big things that we're going to be looking for here are the callouts from EDL. What they're using to determine the callouts is based on...
We have now enabled the rover pyro bus.
So the pyros are the high voltage electronics that actually fire the pyros that push the heat shield away from the spacecraft, that fire the parachute, that fire the pyros that cut the lines and let the descent stage fly away.
The vehicle is preparing for the upcoming cruise stage operation in about 3 minutes 15 seconds by powering off all the devices on the cruise stage in order that they can be safe once the cruise stage is jettisoned.
Now to keep in mind, all of this is autonomous. So the callouts that they're making are when we expect the sequence on board to
We are firing our first pyros to vent the HRS liquid.
As I was saying, I want to get this in before we get to the main stuff. The way that the ground team is able to know that that an event has occurred is our telecom system sends out these tones. So you can think of it like an F sharp, an E natural, an E flat, something like that on a piano. It's a tone. It's a frequency that our telecom system sends out, and that's an indication to our ground system that a certain event has occurred. We use different tones to mark critical events that happen during the sequence.
We are currently 12 and a half
EDL
minutes
landing,
from entry interface.
EDL
commentator, coming upon cruise
who's also
separation in
an
2
EDL
minutes and
engineer,
20 seconds.
looking for those tones on the computer screen to tell us when a certain event has occurred. So we'll know in as soon as the signal gets to the ground that a certain event has occurred. And I guess I should say before we get to anything big here, big expectations for today. Mars landings are about 2 and 5. It's about 40% accurate, 40% success rate to land successfully on the surface. It's very, very difficult. So we make sure we want to set the expectations correctly to begin with. Now, NASA is 4 for 4 on rover landings. So knock on wood, we'll be 5 for 5 today. So yes, everything is, landing success is about 40%.
We're about 1.5 minutes from cruise stage separation, about 11 minutes, 20 seconds from entry interface.
So that is Dr. Swati Mohan. She is the GNC operations lead for 2020, and she's the EDL commentator. The gentleman right next to her at the EDL phase
Telecom is
is the
confirming
EDL
that the
lead
spacecraft
engineer
has
for
switched
2020.
to broadcasting
And he,
tones.
coincidentally,
These
was the
tones are
EDL
received
commentator
directly from
for
Perseverance,
Curiosity.
but have
back
very
in
limited information content. We won't receive real-time information until about 9-10 minutes from now, once the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter starts relaying information from Perseverance. We are under a minute from cruise stage separation, about 10.5 minutes from entry interface.
So on the last big point I want to make before we get started in here, the controllers sitting here when they make call outs, this is really just for show. There is nothing they can do because of the distance between Earth and the spacecraft. So everything is run autonomously. So the call outs that they're looking for, this is more just to make sure that things are proceeding as they should be. But again, there's nothing
They're
they can do.
continuing to receive
Spacecraft
tones
is
from
on its own
Perseverance,
until it gets to.
standing by for cruise stage separation.
So here comes our first major event. So that cruise stage is that round object there on the top with the solar panels and the radiators. Let's stand by for the call out.
Cruise stage up.
Okay, so there's the
We have
call out.
indication that cruise stage separation has been confirmed by the spacecraft. In about 1 minute, Perseverance's landing software will wake up and begin the final preparations for entry. The first action it will do is to fire warm-up pulses with its entry thrusters. These pulses ensure that the spacecraft gets the thrust that it wants during entry interface. We're about 9 minutes from entry interface.
So what she's talking about there is we basically are going to warm up the thrusters so that, because they're sitting out and they're cold, they're next to the coldness of space, that we're just going to kind of fire them so the software is able to calibrate the thrust on those engines to make sure that they respond as we want them to. So it's basically just a way to kind of condition them before we go into the atmosphere. So this entire thing here is called the aeroshell. So the white thing on top there is the back shell, and then we can't see it right now, but the aeroshell is sort of that orange looking device on the other side.
Telecom indicated actually that we could see a signal that the cruise stage went between the Perseverance entry capsule and Earth. So we saw a little blip, the data stream indicating cruise stage separation. We have confirmation that the vehicle has started warming up those entry thrusters.
Looks like a thumbs up from Adam Stelzner. He's the chief engineer and was the EDL lead engineer for Curiosity. So everything's looking good so far.
At this point, the spacecraft is trying to stop its spin from the cruise 2 revolutions per minute down to 0, and then will turn to its desired orientation from entry. It will
And Michelle, just give me 1 second. We need to answer one email.
Balance during all of cruise. This will allow the entry capsule to have lift when it enters the atmosphere. We have confirmation that the spacecraft has turned to the desired entry attitude. We are about 7.5 minutes from entry interface.
So basically, right before we get to entry interface, the spacecraft is essentially turning on. It's activating the flight software it needs to do EDL. It's going to condition its thrusters. It's going to turn on its IMUs, various things that it needs to do the EDL. And from this point on, a couple more things are going to happen before we get to entry interface. There's going to be a ballast weight ejection, so that That basically gets the spacecraft oriented in a way that it's at the right angle for entry for the distance for basically doing the guided navigation through the atmosphere.
Carrier lock. Do you see the carrier on the downlink?
So they've got the downlink carrier on the low gain antenna.
Flight level 1.
We are continuing to wait for entry interface. We're about 6 minutes and 45 seconds from entry interface. We have confirmation from Greenback that they are receiving direct-to-Earth telemetry via that path.
So direct-to-Earth is the X-band telecom system directly sent back to Earth.
These sounds indicate that Perseverance is operating normally and has nothing significant to report.
It's good. That's how we like it. Nice and quiet.
Expected. We're currently just over 6 minutes from entry interface.
And I guess I have a slight window here to answer. So Danica Fitzmaurice is asking what is EDL? So EDL stands for entry, descent, and landing. So the 3 phases of getting down to the ground is the entry part, where you have to go through hypersonic reentry through the atmosphere. The descent part, which is on the supersonic parachute, as well as the descent stage, and then the landing portion is the sky crane, weight on wheels, cutting the pyros, and then descent stage flying away safely from the spacecraft.
We are just under. We're about 5.5 minutes from entry interface. We're still receiving heartbeat tones. We expect to continue receiving heartbeat tones until about 5 minutes after entry. At that time, Perseverance will be no longer in view of our antennas here on Earth. About 90 seconds prior to entry, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter should begin receiving telemetry from Perseverance and streaming it to Earth in near real time. There are a few expected short outages, such as when we have a plasma blackout or when we enter the peak heating phase. Aside from these outages caused by the plasma blackout, antenna switching, or high dynamic events, spacecraft events, we should have telemetry until about 90 seconds after landing. A plasma blackout is when the signal from Perseverance isn't strong enough to make it through the superheated, super fast air flowing around the spacecraft all the way down to Earth. Once the temperature drops below that peak heating, we do reacquire the signal from Perseverance. We are currently about 4.5 minutes from entry interface. Perseverance continues to report heartbeat tones, indicating everything is nominal.
Okay, so good call outs. Perseverance is doing fine on its way to entry interface. Entry interface is the point in the atmosphere where we begin to slow down. We begin to feel the effects of Mars's atmosphere as it begins to slow us down. So what she was talking about there is going to be a 90-second gap where we can't receive telemetry, and that's because the X-band signal from the spacecraft cannot penetrate through the ionized gas that's enveloped around the spacecraft as it's going through the atmosphere.
Ready to receive the signals from Perseverance. It should be in a few minutes here. We're just
flight level 1
from entry interface. Around this time, a second spacecraft, MAVEN, should begin picking up telemetry from Perseverance and will continue to record that telemetry until several minutes post-landing. We won't get that data for several hours after landing as it's being recorded and then will be forwarded to Earth later. We are continuing to receive heartbeat tones, indicating that everything is nominal. We're currently at about 3 minutes until entry interface.
I have to say, when you've been in a situation like this, it's both exciting, but there's a lot of sense of helplessness. There's really nothing you can do at this point. It's going to land, hopefully softly, with or without your help anymore, because there's just really nothing more we can do. So this crew is going to stay laser focused. They usually are, and probably until we get confirmation of landing. And then, yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of high-fiving.
Perseverance is
Michael, we've had a couple of questions come through. Do you have time to answer?
Indicating everything is nominal.
All right. We have Sunset Elementary, 2nd grade from Newton, Kansas.
Hello.
Hi. How long was the trip to Mars?
The trip was just a little over 6.5 months.
Great.
And it's
Is
about
it
a
hot?
300 million mile trip from Earth to Mars.
Got it. Is it hot or cold on Mars?
It's actually really cold. When I worked on the Opportunity rover, we could, at night,
We're
we could
just
get
under
temperatures
2
as low
minutes
as
from entry
minus
interface.
100
As it gets closer to Mars,
overnight.
Perseverance is
And
actually
during the
being
day in the
pulled
summer, you
in
could
by
get as
gravity and
a
accelerating.
balmy,
By the
50 or 60
time
degrees.
Perseverance reaches entry interface point, she should be going just under
Are there any
5.4
volcanoes on Mars?
kilometers per second.
Are there any
We're at
volcanoes?
about
Yes.
90
Yes,
seconds
actually, the
from
largest
entry
volcano
interface
in the solar
and
system
standing by for
is
Mars Reconnaissance
at the
Orbiter
top
to pick up
surface of Mars.
the
It's actually so
telemetry.
tall that if you're at the peak, um, as you looked out to the horizon, the relative horizon to you would still be the volcano.
Cool. All right. One more from Sunset Elementary. Is there a lot of sand on Mars?
Sand in the sense that it's there is sand, so there are dunes on Mars, and actually the rovers actually have trouble driving over these dunes because we get stuck.
We are 1 minute
But the dust
from
sort of
entry
acts
interface.
more like very fine cake powder than actual dust.
Oh, very cool. Do we have time for a couple more?
I think a couple more. I think we're coming up on entry interface here.
All right. Nicole asked, how many ships or spacecraft have we sent to Mars?
MRO is in receive mode.
A lot. I can't name all
We
of
have
them off the top of my
confirmation
head.
that the Mars Reconnaissance
Yes.
Orbiter is now relaying data from Perseverance. We're about 30 seconds from entry interface.
Okay.
Perseverance is going about 5.2 kilometers
I'm gonna
per
hold off
second
on that
and is
comment.
about
That's
190 kilometers altitude above the surface of Mars.
Confirm UHF data flow.
All right, here we go. So this is a real-time
Seconds from entry
MTLW
interface.
on.
this is a real-time simulation with
5.3
data
kilometers
that
per
is coming
second at an
from
altitude of about 150 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
that landing target over there. That is Jezero Crater, about 2,500 kilometers downrange distance.
Entry.
We have confirmation of entry interface.
All right, so we're in the
Perseverance is currently
atmosphere.
going 5.3 kilometers per second at an altitude of about 120 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
You can see the acceleration is beginning to build up there, 0.93 meters per second squared. That's how we can tell that we're finally in the atmosphere, because we have resistance to the spacecraft. We never really had resistance.
Is now waiting until it begins feeling the atmosphere of Mars slow it down. Once there is enough atmosphere, it will start controlling its path to the landing target.
Doppler indicates entry into the atmosphere.
Navigation is also confirming that we can see a little bit of that slowdown of the atmosphere on the Perseverance entry capsule. Our current velocity is about 5.36 kilometers per second and an altitude of about 67 kilometers from the surface.
We are probably seeing MRO plasma blackout at this point.
Bank 1 completed.
MRO has lost log.
Doppler indicates
That's normal.
reversal.
That's normal. As the spacecraft goes into
We
an
have
ionization
indications that
blackout, that's
Perseverance
normal
is
to lose the
now
signal.
performing bank reversals in the atmosphere. These are the steps in order to control its
Max
distance
decel 10 Gs.
to the landing target. Perseverance has just passed through the point of maximum deceleration and has indicated that it felt approximately
Bank 2 is
10 Earth Gs of deceleration.
MRO has lock again.
Doppler indicates
So the
reversal.
roll control they're talking about is ways that we can
We saw
limit
a small outage
the forces and the amount of
of
G. We can
the
actually pop out of the
telemetry
atmosphere for
from
just a little
Mars
bit and then
Reconnaissance
pop back.
Orbiter during that peak heating phase, likely caused by the plasma blackout. Perseverance is still continuing to perform bank reversals in the atmosphere to control its distance to the landing target.
Doppler indicates reversal.
End of range control, range minus 1.9 kilometers, cross range minus 2.4 kilometers.
Perseverance is going about 1 kilometers per second at an altitude of about 16 kilometers from the surface of Mars. we have entered heading alignment, which means Perseverance is no longer trying to control the distance to Mars, to the target on Mars, but instead is flying straight to the target.
So you can see on the simulation there, we're nearly over the landing site now. That next big thing, the slew and surf slews, that stands for straight up and fly right. So they're gonna straighten up the spacecraft capsule prior to deploying the parachute.
MRO's reporting good telemetry log.
You see it, Mach
We are
2
coming
still?
upon the proper start. We are starting the straighten up and fly right maneuver,
UVMD jettison,
where the spacecraft will jettison the entry balance masses
So the balance
in
mass
preparation
is
for
gone.
parachute deploy and to roll over to give the radar a better look at the ground.
Indicate chute deploy.
The navigation has confirmed that the parachute has deployed, and we are seeing significant deceleration in the velocity. Our current velocity is 440 meters per second at an altitude of about 12 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
All right, that's really good. That's really good. Parachutes are always kind of an engineering they make us nervous. So the parachute is out, and they saw the right amount of acceleration, which means the
Perseverance
parachute
is now slowed
is
to
deployed and it's
subsonic
doing its job.
speeds, and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look
All right, so
at
the
the surface.
heat shield is
Current
gone.
velocity is 145 meters per second at an altitude of about 9.5 kilometers above the surface.
All right, so next big event, we're going to get rid of the heat shield. We're going to turn on the landing vision system cameras. Those are going to help us with the terrain relative navigation that helps us find places, good places for
nav filter converge, velocity solution 3.3 meters per second, altitude 7.4 kilometers.
Now has radar lock on the ground. Current velocity is about 100 meters per second, 6.6 kilometers above the surface of Mars.
All right, so we're using our radars and we can see the ground. So we're using that information to tell how fast we're going to the ground and how high we're
parachute. We are coming up on the initialization of terrain relative navigation and subsequently the priming of the landing engines. Our current velocity is about 90 meters per second at an altitude of 4.2 kilometers.
All right, looks like they've got terrain relative navigation started.
OVS valid.
We have confirmation that the lander vision system has produced a valid solution and part of terrain relative navigation.
Priming. TBA is nominal.
We have priming of the landing engines.
All right, so the engines are primed. So when they separate next, they'll light those and we'll be in powered descent.
Back shell set.
Back shell
83
set.
meters per second at about 2.6 kilometers from the surface of Mars.
We're
We
in
have
powered
confirmation
flight.
that the back shell has separated. We are currently performing the divert maneuver. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second at an altitude of about a kilometer off the surface of Mars.
TRN safety Bravo.
We have completed our terrain relative navigation. Current speed is about 30 meters per second, altitude of about 300 meters off the surface of Mars.
SDS level.
Constant velocity
104.
Constant velocity accordion, altitude air.
We have started our constant velocity accordion, which means we are conducting the sky crane, about to conduct the sky crane maneuver.
We've lost direct to Earth tones.
That's normal. That's normal.
Throttle
Nothing to
down.
be worried about.
Sky crane maneuver has started.
Sky crane is initiated.
20 meters
Tango
off the surface.
Delta.
That's touchdown. Stand by.
Nominal.
We're getting signals from MRO.
Stand
Bring
by.
me stable.
Stand by. Stand by.
Good.
Touchdown confirmed. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the sands of past life. At this point, the descent stage has flown away to a safe distance. Perseverance is continuing to transmit direct through Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter to Earth.
How you doing, Michael?
I'm getting too old for this. Oh my goodness. So why I was saying to wait is because just because we have that Tango Delta, which is the touchdown call, we still have this very heavy descent stage sitting over the top.
No reports. They're still getting telemetry from the lander.
So we still getting telemetry from the rover. The rover is alive
All right, all
on the
stations.
surface. So what I was saying is
Touchdown
we were
confirmed. We're
waiting
gonna wait for the
for
images.
that Tango Delta nominal call out. And that means that we're on the surface and the pyros have cut the wires and the descent stage is flying away. Just because we're on the ground doesn't mean that we're on the ground safely, because we have this very heavy piece of equipment over the top of the rover, and if it runs out of fuel, and it's just going to fall down and smack on top of the rover. So we have to wait for that Tango Delta nominal call. They've got it. The rover is on the surface. God, isn't spaceflight just so much fun?
I'm completely stressed out, and I don't have any involved. I mean, you know.
And
It's like-
you know,
OL3, OL1, you have what you need?
makes this look so easy.
OL3, I have what I need. Flight, we have seen the completion of EDL 3000.
Copy.
Copy activity. That is as expected.
So do you have a favorite moment for mission control during your previous Mars projects?
What's that?
Do you have any favorite moments, you know, like what they're going through now
Strong signal from the lander.
from a Mars
well,
project?
Flight, this is OL3. I am ready to share.
Turn this down.
OL3,
So
go.
my memories in mission control at JPL are kind of sad ones, because the best memories I have are when spacecraft didn't land on the surface. Oh, we got an image. We got an image. Stand by. So that image right there in the top, that's from the HAZ camera. So we're on the surface. Oh my gosh.
Flight, this is OL3. I have the target point on the map when you are
So yeah,
We are ready,
my
OL3.
experience in the
Go for
control
it.
center is not the best, because I've only been there when missions have come to an end, Opportunity and Cassini. So I've never got to experience something like this in the control center. I wish I will have it someday in my career. I look forward to it, because I want to have my experiences in mission control be those of great success, and not, you know,
Flight,
saying
I'll
goodbye
be
to space.
moving in, showing you the safe zone that we've landed in.
Wow.
That's exciting.
Wow. Looks good. All right, so any other questions?
Yeah, we have a couple. Do you have a few more minutes?
I do have a couple more minutes.
Let's see. Do they have any earthquakes on Mars?
Do they have any
TRN.
Earth-
TRN.
Any earthquakes?
Actually, yes. InSight has found that Mars is geologically not as active as Earth, but it does shake. It does shake. And InSight's actually found that over the last 2 years that it's been on the surface.
Let's see. What was different about this landing compared to the others you've been a part of?
The big difference between this one was the use of that terrain relative navigation. So that TRN they were chanting there. That enabled the rover to go to a much more, I guess, dangerous site compared to others, because for the first time we actually had the ability to use our eyes to see where the hazards were, rather than just using our radar to tell how far we are from the surface. So Curiosity only really had its radar to tell how far above the surface it was, but with TRN we actually had a set of eyes to see where it was we were going. So that was a big improvement. But the landing itself, the technique is the same. It's very good.
Let's see. Do you have a favorite tool that's part of the Perseverance project?
Well, I don't work on Perseverance, so I don't really have a tool that I would say is my favorite. I assume that they use probably the same planning equipment that that Curiosity uses. But I have not ever worked Curiosity operations, so I can't really answer that.
Did you tell us the story behind the Lucky Peanuts?
So yeah, real quick, the story about the Lucky Peanuts is back in the 60s. JPL was tasked by the U.S. government to demonstrate navigation techniques to the moon, as well as demonstrating soft landing techniques on the surface. But before they had to do that, they had to first prove that they could actually hit the moon. So in designing the first sets of spacecraft that went to the moon, it turns out flying to the moon was really hard. They had trouble with the launch vehicles, and then they had trouble with navigating. They had troubles with the cameras turning on. So they actually hit the moon once, but they didn't have the cameras on, so it didn't do it good. So on, I believe it was the 5th or the 6th attempt of this same mission, there was an engineer that worked on the project that was a very nervous eater, and he liked to eat peanuts. So they brought peanuts into the control center. They passed the peanuts around on the mission, and mission worked just fine. Now, the difference between the last spacecraft that they flew to the moon and the one that they successfully landed, there was no difference between the two of them. The only difference that the engineer saw was that there were peanuts. So afterwards, they decided, well, the peanuts must be lucky. So we keep them in our mission control center anytime we have a major event like this. It's tradition. It's not superstition. Engineers aren't superstitious. But yeah, that's the story of the Lucky Peanuts. I'm sure every type of space organization has a tradition, something like this. Yeah, that's the tradition we had at JPL.
Going back. I'm back. We have one more. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah, I got time for one more.
Great. We had to ask this one. How did your experience at the Cosmosphere influence your career path?
Wow, put me on the spot there, Michelle. So I got started in this business watching Pathfinder back in '96 land on the surface of Mars. Pretty much wanted to work on space missions as a profession. I'm doing that now. Saw John Glenn go up in 1997, so wanted to be an astronaut after that. I lived an hour from the Cosmosphere. It was right there. It's not hard to get inspired when you get to go see all the Apollo history and then, the stuff that happens in real time when you're growing up. So yeah, I pretty much knew I was going to be an engineer. I knew I was going to work on spacecraft. If I ever get to become an astronaut, that'd be great. If I don't, I'm at least building the systems that astronauts are using to fly to the moon and missions that are exploring other planets. So it definitely is a very rewarding career.
Very good. Well, that is all the questions we have, unless you have anything else. I know you had to take off. So if you have.
If you want to keep up with the mission, go to mars.nasa.gov/Mars 2020. They will. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be going on here in the next couple of weeks. They've got to get the spacecraft safe. Once it landed, they've got to deploy the mast and a bunch of other things, get a bunch of equipment unlocked. And then they're going to do an initial shakeout of the spacecraft, and then they're going to do the really cool engineering demonstration, which is the helicopter that I know everyone is looking forward to seeing. And then afterwards, they're going to get started on their mission. So mars.nasa.gov/Mars 2020 will be the site that has all the updates of what the mission is doing, news articles, videos. I know I'm very much looking forward to seeing the EDL camera footage from this because we've never actually seen it before. It will probably take them some time to get the data off the spacecraft and get it edited and get it conditioned before we see it. But yeah, that's the place to go. Have all the information from the mission there on.
So exciting, so exciting. Well, we want to thank you so much. Just from us at the Cosmosphere, we're so proud of you and what you do. And we want to thank all the viewers out there for tuning in today into this historic event. So thank you all so much for being here.
Kudos to the team. Like they make this stuff look easy.
It's amazing.
It's not fair. They just make it look so easy.
It's no big deal.
And Michelle, if anyone has any questions and they want to reach out to me directly, just give me an email and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Absolutely. Yes. And if we have questions come through after, we'll definitely pass them along to Michael. So
very good.
Very good. Well, thank you all again for joining us today, and stay safe and stay warm. Goodbye from Kansas.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.